Okay, we're going to be hot in 15 seconds, people. Stand by. Queue open.
Talent, check your spot.
Audio up.
Clear the set, everybody.
Stand by camera 3. Stand by camera 1. Camera 4, check your focus.
Carol, make sure the phone guests are standing by.
Stand by camera 2.
Okay, Don, we're ready out here.
Okay, thanks. Let's rock and roll. Count them in.
10, 9,
Here we go.
8,
Flying graphic.
7,
Camera 2, I'm going to be coming to you
5,
first. Stand by to cue Mark.
4, 3, 2.
And cue Mark.
Hello, I'm Mark Crutcher, President of Life Dynamics, and I want to welcome you to Life Talk from March 2015. And just like every month, we're going to get started with Alan Ackles and Life Talk News. Alan?
All right, thank you, Mark. Abortion clinics continued to close in the early part of 2015 as Planned Parenthood shut down facilities in Issaquah, Washington, Brewster, New York, and in addition, Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains has announced that they are closing their facility in Pueblo, Colorado, saying that their lease expired, and the shopping center they rented from would not renew it. This particular facility was caught during a Life Dynamics sting operation, agreeing to illegally cover up for adult men who have sexual relations with minor children. Information on that campaign can be found at childpredator.com. In an update to a previous Life Talk news story, the Michigan Attorney General's office has suspended the license of a local abortion clinic after authorities discovered several health code violations. According to the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, the Women's Center of Southfield, owned by abortionist Jacob Kalo, failed to maintain a sterile environment and did not accurately inform patients of the risks and complications they faced by having abortions. The order was prompted after a patient came forward saying abortionist Reginald Sharp botched her 23-week abortion so badly she required treatment in an emergency care hospital. And in similar instances of botched abortions, Operation Rescue reported that in one single weekend, 4 women were transported by ambulance from abortion clinics. According to the group, the emergencies took place at Planned Parenthood in Houston, Texas, Planned Parenthood in Riverside, California, Little Rock Family Planting Services in Arkansas, and Akron Women's Medical Group in Ohio. In most of these instances, pro-lifers were present when the ambulances arrived and captured video of the victims being rushed to nearby hospitals. In Pennsylvania, the president of a Jesuit university has decided that the school's health plan will no longer cover abortion for the so-called hard cases. Father Kevin Quinn made the announcement in a letter to University of Scranton employees. Up to that point, the school had covered abortions if they were necessary to prevent the death of the woman and those caused by rape or incest. Father Quinn explained that there was no justification for the university to provide abortion coverage, stating that the moral teaching of the church on abortion is unequivocal. Well, a Texas man has been given 2 life sentences with no possibility of parole after he raped a child and then took her for an abortion. The victim was the daughter of another child that 36-year-old Roy Wayne raped at the age of 12, according to reports. The pedophile began having sex with the daughter when she was 8 years old, forcing the child to take birth control pills. At the age of 13, Jackson impregnated her and took her for an abortion. Afterward, he brought the child back to the doctor for a birth control patch. Since the sexual abuse continued for another 2 years, and it's clear that neither the abortion clinic nor the doctor notified the police, as they are required to do so by state law. The situation did not end until the girl became pregnant for a second time and told her cousin what was going on, and it was the cousin who called the authorities. Also in Dallas, Texas, Dallas Cowboys running back Joseph Randle allegedly tried to pay his girlfriend to abort their unborn child. According to reports, Randle made the offer to Dahlia Jacobs, but she refused and is now suing him for child support to help pay for their 1-year-old son. Ms. Jacobs said Randle hasn't been involved in their child's life and made it clear from the beginning that he was not supportive of her pregnancy. According to her attorney, he originally offered her $5,000 to have an abortion, but eventually upped the offer to $20,000. And at one point, Ms. Jacobs called police saying that Randle had a gun and that she was in fear for her life. In Alabama, a group of pro-life leaders have accused state officials of ignoring suspected illegal activity occurring inside a local abortion clinic. The group, which includes Operation Rescue and the Charismatic Episcopal Church for Life, said that under state law, any private practice performing more than 9 abortions a month must be licensed by the state. They claim that Central Alabama Women's Clinic, operated by Samuel Lett, is functioning as an abortion clinic without the required licensing and inspections. The group has provided overwhelming evidence to state officials to back up their claims and is calling for an immediate shutdown of the clinic. In Minnesota, administrators at a Catholic university say that they are standing firm in their decision to allow students to receive academic credit for interning with a local chapter of the National Organization for Women. The president of the University of St. Thomas attempted to justify the decision by stating that now is not just focused on abortion, but is also involved in other activities. Recently, the school has been under fire for also offering internships at other radically pro-abortion groups, including Planned Parenthood and the Minnesota chapter of the National Abortion Rights Action League. And finally, Missouri Pro-Life Foundation has purchased the Twin Spires in downtown St. Joseph with plans to create a national pro-life shrine. Representatives of the St. Mary and St. Joseph Family Memorial Foundation, which also operates the National American Holocaust Memorial in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, said that when it opens this spring, the church will become the Shrine of the Immaculate Conception, the first national pro-life shrine in the country. It will serve as a location for prayer to end abortion and for atonement for the babies and the conversion of their parents. Alan Ackles here for Life Talk News. You can get daily news updates by logging on to prolifeamerica.com. Mark, there you go. Back to you.
Thanks, Alan. Well, last month we said Father Frank was going to be here this month. We keep on the deal of trying to keep all the cats herded up, but it didn't work. Father Frank had a problem in his family. His father slipped and hit his head on the ice and had to have surgery. So Father Frank is there taking care of that situation. So we would ask for everyone to give their prayers to his family. But they're a tough bunch. I can tell you those Pravones are a pretty salty group, so he'll be fine. And I talked to Father Frank yesterday. He said he's doing well. Anyway, later on in the show, we're going to have Father Frank joining us by phone. So in the meantime, we're filling in with a person here on our show for the first time, Sean Martin. Hello, Sean.
Hello. It's good to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Well, it's our pleasure, and I thank you for joining us on such short notice.
Absolutely.
We didn't know this was going to happen, so we appreciate your being here.
Glad to be here.
I'll get back to you in just a minute. And of course, Destiny wandered back onto the reservation this month.
I found my way back in.
And we let her back in.
Thank you.
We had the gates locked and everything, but
I'm a good climber.
she climbed over the gate and got back in. So, and then of course my worthy sidekick here, comical sidekick, Renee Hobbs is back again as usual.
Hello.
And Sean, before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here, what you're doing here.
Well, I appreciate that. I work for an organization called Online for Life. It's based in Plano here in the DFW Metroplex. We work with pregnancy centers all over the country, doing everything from online marketing, offline marketing, trying to drive folks who are looking for abortions into pregnancy clinics. We also have a call center that takes those calls, sets those appointments. We have 2 clinics that we own and operate ourselves, and then we have a church division, which is the division I run, working with churches across the country, trying to educate them on this issue and get them to actually talk about it,
Yeah.
which we found is a challenge.
You guys are bringing some professionalism to the CPC network, and that's a good thing to see.
Yeah.
Anyway, we applaud what you're doing, and again, thanks for
Appreciate
joining
it.
us today. Let's get started. As usual, you know, we always, you and I lay out the show the day before, and we always say, this is all the things we're going to get to, and we never do.
Right, we don't. We have so much.
We have never gotten to everything. We've talked many times in the past about what the future looks like for America, and I've always said some of the things that we see happening here are pretty alarming, but if you want to see where America's headed, just look at other countries, especially countries like Canada and England, to see what's going on there, because whatever's going on there is going to happen here. It's bad enough what's already going on here. In Canada now, in Saskatchewan province, but this is across Canada, doctors are now being warned that even if they don't do abortions themselves, they must refer for abortions. Whatever their position on abortion is, they must refer for abortions. And of course, the problem here is that when you refer for abortion, that puts you in the chain of that abortion.
Yes, it does.
So if a child is floating innocently in his mother's womb and winds up in an abortion clinic, everybody that participated in that chain that caused that child to wind up in that abortion clinic is responsible. So how do you, as a physician, if you're smart enough to know, and every physician is, whether they acknowledge it or not, every physician knows that an unborn child is a living human being. If you're one of the ones who says, I'm going to act on that, as opposed to say an abortionist or something, How do you reconcile this with your conscience?
One of these days, they're going to have to stop calling themselves the pro-choice movement because there's so little choice in it. I mean, that's the irony. We're forcing doctors. A lot of these women are being forced, and certainly the child doesn't have a choice at the end of the day.
Well, the issue is you can choose abortion, you just can't unchoose it.
Right.
Not only do they have to refer, but if there's not a clinic or somebody around, they have to perform the abortions themselves.
Right.
Or euthanasia
Right. You know, it's
with older people.
it's really scary. And if you don't think that this is coming our way under Obamacare, think again, because I can tell you exactly how they're gonna do this. When all the doctors are basically, if you think about it for a minute, what Obamacare is designed to do is to make every physician in America an employee of the federal government. That's basically what it says they're going to do. So now you can see this coming down the pike. You can see it in the things that they're already doing, where they're going to say, you're a government employee. This is an aspect of your job. If you don't want to do that aspect of your job, then you got to go.
Right. You
Right.
don't have a choice.
Right.
Well, and that's the interesting thing about Canada. I didn't realize that you don't have like a Planned Parenthood on every corner there because of socialized medicine. Most of the abortions are taking place in doctors' offices, which also makes it a lot harder for you to be there to offer counseling to the women because you don't know
Where
they're happening. They're kind of happening everywhere.
And we're seeing our rights all over the place in this country being chipped away, and we're fighting it here locally in different formats.
Right.
But again, it's the ability to express my own beliefs, my own convictions in the way I perform my job is being taken away completely.
Well, and a good example of this is now you have this provision in D.C., the District of Columbia, where they're saying that they've passed a thing now where you can't discriminate against somebody because of gender or age or race or so forth. Everybody's on board with those. Now they're saying you can't discriminate against somebody on the basis of their views on reproductive choice. And they're literally saying that even if you're a pro-life organization and somebody comes to apply to you that's a pro-abort, you have to hire them. You can't not hire that person because of that. So you could have a CPC in the DC, under the DC jurisdiction, that you'd have to hire somebody who's a pro-abort.
So wait, will it work the other way around? Like, can I go to a Planned Parenthood and get a job being openly pro-life?
As long as you don't live by that while you're there. In other words, if a girl comes in, you couldn't talk to her about the pro-life.
Womp womp, never mind that.
Why would somebody that's pro-life want to go to a pro-abortion organization or vice versa? I just
Well, I can see why they would. Why wouldn't, if you're the abortion industry, wouldn't you love to have a couple of your people working in every CPC in the country?
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's
So there's no provision in that law to make it make an exception for a pro-life group.
They
nonprofit
put
or a
that
church
provision
or-
in there specifically for that purpose.
Wow.
And again, you can see this coming through Obamacare in the future. This is where we're headed. Steny Hoyer, a congressman, he's a House Minority Whip, Democrat, of course. He's the leading Democrat pushing this in the D.C. And of course, they're all pushing for D.C. statehood too. But they're the ones pushing for this. And they're literally saying you cannot discriminate, deny employment on the basis of their reproductive health decision making.
So someone could be hypothetically volunteering at a pregnancy center while also planning their own abortion?
What they're saying.
Okay.
That's what they're saying. It's scary. By the way, before we move on, I'd like everybody to know about your situation with your children. You have a really neat story to tell about that.
Sure.
You're like the little old lady that lived in the shoe, right?
Have so many children, don't know what to do. Yes, so we have 10 children. We have 2 biological, 8 adopted with all kinds of special needs, and we have 3 different kids in wheelchairs. We have Downs, we have autism. We've got all kinds of exciting things going on. Just finalized an adoption on Tuesday, so very, very recent.
Well, that's really neat.
Adding to the family.
That's really neat.
And they're a gorgeous family. They're like, looking at their pictures on Facebook. They're one of the happiest families that I've seen. I can't imagine having that many and all smiles. I can't even get 4 of them to smile at the same time in my pictures.
All right.
I hear you on that.
Right, you got 3. They don't all smile at the same time, do they?
Especially the youngest and the oldest.
No, somebody's always got to be a jerk. That's when you edit and pop a head from another picture onto
Right.
it. You have to get.
We've done that too.
Right.
We've done that too.
We got a story about something we've talked about here many times. Scientists are now saying that we're now getting closer to the point where we can actually have designer babies. And you can literally go down and if you were pregnant again, they could tell if your baby was going to have blue eyes or brown eyes or green eyes. And if you didn't like that, then, you know, you can do away with that
I
baby.
think the only thing that you can say about this is that they're playing God. I mean,
That's exactly what it is. Well, that's what abortion's all about.
That's right. Well, yeah,
Right.
right. Yeah,
That's exactly what they're doing. And this is man's desire to be God. They're not playing God, they want to be God.
right. That's right.
And you may remember, you weren't here at the time, but we had a show on the other end of this scale, what's called Deformer babies. Are y'all familiar with that term or what that's about? I know you are.
I am. Yeah.
Is that where they donate?
No,
Organs?
Deformer babies are where a woman goes in and discovers that her baby's okay, perfectly healthy, perfectly normal. But let's say the woman is deaf and she wants a deaf baby.
Wow.
And there are, and the deaf, this radical deaf lobby is one apparently that's really pushing this. And they are taking steps to take a baby that can hear and making him deaf before he's born. And it's not only deaf, but there's other
Sure.
maladies that they're trying to mimic, and they're calling them deformer babies. So you got designer babies on one end. You're going to make them just perfect, or what your idea of perfect is.
Right.
And what is your idea of perfect? For your situation, your babies are perfect. I don't think you'd look at any of your children and say that one's imperfect.
What we say all the time is we all have imperfections.
Sure.
Right. You can just see theirs a
Right.
lot easier than you can see mine.
Right.
I can hide mine better.
Right.
They can't.
Well, you know, when I was a kid, my big ambition in life, and I know this doesn't sound like much, but I wanted to be heavyweight boxing champion of the world. I thought there wasn't anything better than that. You couldn't be anything better than the heavyweight champion of the world. And I did boxing for a while, and found out that, you know, there's one thing about boxing that you discover: you can play tennis or you know, golf or whatever, and if you're not very good at it, you can still have fun. But if you're not very good at boxing, it loses its appeal real quickly, real quickly. So I did it for 3 years and moved on. But I never was going to be heavyweight champion of the world. So the fact that I was too small to do that and too slow and didn't have the talents for it, were those handicaps? Well, for me, they were. They wouldn't have been a handicap for you, but they would have been for me.
Right.
So let's say then that I had a desire to say, well, since I didn't make it, I'm going to live through my son. I want him to be. I didn't have a son, but let's say that I did. And we find out when my wife is pregnant with him that he has something in him they were able to discover that's going to keep him from ever being heavyweight champion of the world. Should he be killed for that reason?
Some people do it.
They do it for less reason than that. What brought this up is we had a story about some people, I think it was in Arizona, that they were concert level musicians. One of them played the cello, one of them played the violin or something, man and wife. And they wanted that for their child. And it was discovered in utero that when she was pregnant, that her child was missing one of its fingers, or 2 fingers were fused together or something like that. They aborted that child for that reason. Now, if you can abort a child, and this brings up an interesting philosophical concept as it relates to abortion. If you can abort a child for no reason, in other words, we say it's none of our business why a woman walks into an abortion clinic and kills her baby. Why do we get all jacked up about her aborting for a reason? So we're, in other words, is our societal position, as long as she's doing it for no reason whatsoever, we're okay with it.
Right.
But if she's going to do it because the baby has got 2 fingers fused together or
Right.
never be a concert pianist,
Right. Yeah, it's selfish either way.
Well, there was the woman that we talked about 6 months ago who was on the board for some charity for children with disabilities, and that was her passion. She was extremely pro-choice, and she had that issue. She said, you can abort for any reason, but you should not abort because the child has a disability. So she was even going backwards. I think that is the danger. You're talking about, you know, science and kind of playing God and the stuff we start doing that, even the church is okay with, and it's acceptable at first when it comes to IVF. I didn't realize when you get pregnant from IVF, what they like to do is they take the embryos that they've selected and they put the strongest one and the weakest one in there together, knowing that odds are your body's going to miscarry the weakest one. It's going to be absorbed into the lining, and then it gives the stronger one a better chance of surviving. That's something you have to accept, you know, and the interesting thing is so many pro-life people choose IVF because they want children and they want to have that experience. And then you realize that we started making these kind of accommodations that are going down this slippery slope that absolutely, why wouldn't we end up in a place where we are aborting because the child's not exactly the way we want it, especially if you've invested a lot of money in your designer baby.
Well, the interesting thing here is going to be for the gay community, because this, and what I'm about to tell you here, is going to come. We've talked about it before. This is going to happen. They're going to discover a gene at some point that they say it gives you a propensity for being homosexual. Now, I'm going to tell you that most parents, if they're abortion-minded or accepting of abortion, who have a child with that, are probably going to abort that child for that reason. Now, the homosexual community is closely linked with the pro-abortion community in this country. How are they going to deal with that? How are they going to deal with, because you're going to be in this position like this woman you're talking about is in, or like the society as a whole is in. You can abort for no reason whatsoever, but you can't abort for a reason.
Yeah.
You can only do it if you don't have a reason to do it. I mean, this is the most bizarre.
And I think there's obviously two different ways of looking at this whole situation. There's a lot of different ways of looking at the situation, but one is often for no reason at all. What we're calling no reason is all the mother's reason, right? It's my reason, it's the mother or the father, my reason for not wanting to have a child at this time, and it's about my life and it's about me and what I'm doing. And on the other side, it's about I don't want a child who's going to have these struggles, these challenges, and so we're going to end this child's life now so it doesn't have to live with these challenges. One of the things that we've discovered with raising our kids is the kids with all of these challenges, by and large, couldn't care less.
They're happy.
They're very happy.
Right.
They're loving life. They don't know life any differently. And it's us who has this impression. I just read Rick and Karen Santorum's new book called Bella's Gift, about their daughter, Bella, who has trisomy 18. The book just came out, and I highly recommend it. But in that book, he uses George Bush's quote about education, specifically of inner cities and poor folks, and they're saying that by not pouring the funds in, by not demanding more out of education for those in urban communities, he called it the soft bigotry of low expectations. Santorum talked about that with kids with disabilities as the soft bigotry of low expectations leading to death for these kids. And that's exactly what we do in our culture. Once they're alive, we have very, very low expectations of them. Once they're out of the womb, once they're with us, we tend to have very, very low expectations. But when they're in the womb, we have no expectation. We just want to oftentimes get rid of them.
But let's make a point about this deal of killing these children. Basically, they say we're going to kill them for their own good.
Absolutely.
Right. We're going to kill them to put them out of their misery.
That's what they say.
That's a bald-faced lie.
Absolutely.
Society kills them to put them out of society's misery.
That's exactly right.
That's the issue.
Right.
That's what's happening. So let's, I'd feel much better about it if society would just come out and say that. Say, we find them unsightly, they're expensive, we don't want them around, they make us uncomfortable. I don't want to go to a restaurant and see them sitting in a restaurant in a booth next to me. That's because that's what this is really about.
And you've mentioned the Affordable Care Act several times, and that in the Affordable Care Act, that is a reality that we're going to be faced with.
Right. That's right. And we've covered here before. You remember, Renee, we had a story here not long ago where this I can't remember where he was from, but he was from some major university in the United States. Not Peter Singer, but someone like that, a bioethicist, saying that we've reached the point now, and he thinks it's good that we've reached the point where people who have a handicapped child are irresponsible.
Oh, Richard Dawkins sent out a tweet saying it would be immoral to bring a child who had Downs into the world if you had a choice.
Right. Now, let me ask you this, though. And again, they're already extending this outside the womb. We've talked about this.
Absolutely.
And Peter Singer has said this, that parents ought to be allowed a year and a half to decide.
Up to 5 years, right?
I don't know. Have they expanded it to 5?
I thought they had.
Maybe they have. I don't know. But I know originally he said they ought to have a year or so to decide if they don't bond with the child. If they don't bond, which is very subjective, if they don't bond with the child, then they should be able to take it in and have the doctor lethally inject this child.
Maybe we should abort the parents, because if you can't bond
That's
with
a
an
good
adorable
idea.
baby, there's something weird with you. Did you guys see the movie The Giver? that came out last year. They had Meryl Streep was in it, which is so funny because all of the lines out of her mouth, you know, she's extremely pro-abortion, but she says when you give people choice, they always make the wrong decision. So we can't give them choice. So what they would do is they would allow a child to live for a year or two, and if it wasn't meeting all of the marks that it was supposed to, then it would be released. And so nobody in the community understood what this meant. And then the boy who becomes the giver, who's the one who has all the wisdom and the memories, because that's how they keep history, is this one person, he finds out that releasing them basically means euthanizing them. And his little brother has not perfectly healthy baby, but hadn't met some of his, you know, marks that he was supposed to progress, and so he's going to be released. And the end of the story, he says, we have not eradicated murder. We've simply named it something else.
Right.
That is
right.
exactly what abortion is.
That's
And so you're
exactly.
sitting here watching all these Hollywood pro-aborts act in a movie, and you're like, do you not see how this is exactly what we're doing right now?
They probably don't.
It's what we've talked about many times. Human brain is the only organism in nature, the
That can
only one
rationalize.
that has the capacity to trick itself.
That's right.
No other organism in nature has that capacity, only the human brain. And that's what you're talking about there. I want to talk about one of Renee's, I know y'all probably don't believe this, one of Renee's most favorite people.
Wendy Davis, is that who we're talking about?
Yeah, right. Renee, tell the audience the language you were using yesterday.
I can't.
Just between me and you about Wendy Davis.
I shouldn't.
All right. The neat thing here is the abortion Barbie, who they thought was the next big thing back when she was running for governor of Texas. And her little thing and her little pink tennis shoes, it was so cute
Right,
down in Austin,
right.
lobbying against the HB2. She was going to be the next big thing.
They thought, yeah.
And she has crashed and burned.
Burned.
And they saw it coming about 3/4 of the way through the election because they thought it's going to be close or she's going to win or she's going to, you know, she's going to be the next governor. And when they decided that she wasn't, you know, the Democrats pulled all their support out of Texas and said, well, we got no chance, so we're going to put it over here. And of course, she lost by 20-something points or whatever. She got pummeled. And then she decided she's going to go out on the speaking circuit. She's going to be a national speaker for the war on women.
Right.
And now,
And education.
and
Yes,
education. And
right.
now the company that signed her up as a speaker is not even promoting, doesn't even want to have
Yeah,
anything
they
to do
don't
with
want
it.
her.
Okay, so y'all saw the video.
Yes.
Someone got drunk with a green screen. Like that's all
That's
I can.
all it
It is
was.
the worst
Yeah.
video, the lowest quality production I've ever seen, where she's zooming in and then getting tiny and floating all around the screen
over.
while there's like this
Yes.
cheesy elevator music in the background, and you're almost waiting for her to like start selling you used cars and stuff in the middle of it. It is the worst.
It's horrible.
I actually maybe would have been interested in how her speaking career was going to go until watching that, and then I don't ever want her to be involved with speaking
no.
publicly anywhere.
That's on YouTube, and it's, this incredible shrinking woman video.
Jill Stanek, wrote a whole blog about it. It's ridiculous.
It's interesting because they're setting her up as the expert on women's health care, right? You know her experience in women's health care? When she was very young, she worked as a receptionist in a doctor's office.
Yeah. there
Doesn't
you
that
are.
qualify?
Yeah. Apparently it does.
Expert.
Anyway, she's crashing and burning, which is good.
Well, she's becoming a mouthpiece for Planned Parenthood is all she is. Even in the little infomercial she does for Planned Parenthood, all she's talking about is their birth control and stuff, which is not that far off because before she decided to run for governor, she actually used to speak with Planned Parenthood reps all the time on these panels. She did one out at SMU where it was basically just her promoting
Well, you
healthcare
know,
for
the
women.
thing about it is, if you look at it from a, I guess, so-called feminist, or what I would call a neo-feminist position, she's everything that they say they object to. She used men earlier in her life. She married an older man,
Used his money.
used
up.
his money. As soon as she talks about pulling herself up by her bootstraps and getting out of a trailer in Fort Worth and going to Harvard Law School. The only reason that happened is she married this old guy who put her through Harvard Law School, she had 2 babies with him.
He raised the kids
He
while
raised,
she went to
when
school.
she graduated from Harvard, she left him that week.
Yeah.
The week that she left him,
Right.
I mean, she graduated from Harvard, she left him
Right.
and left her children with him.
So Cecile Richards just needs to hire her as their speaker, and she needs to move out of Fort Worth.
Right, right. Be done with
And
it.
find a sugar daddy somewhere else.
Right.
Well, and connecting this to the story we were just talking about children with special needs, she did go through an abortion of a child who had
Yeah, she did.
special needs.
She killed one of her babies. That's one of her
And
qualifications.
it infuriated all the feminists because she gave that excuse that it was because they had special needs, and all these feminists were saying, it doesn't matter, it shouldn't matter, you shouldn't even have to tell us why.
You don't have to justify it.
We should just be happy that you had an abortion.
Well,
That's
you
all
know,
that matters.
Renee, you're going to have to change your attitude about this woman, or she's going to take you off her Christmas card list.
That's okay.
It's
She
okay.
probably already has.
Right. Unfortunately, we've got another abortion Barbie springing up. This one's a Republican, and she's named Renee.
I know, go figure.
Right. Renee Elmers, she's a Congress nuisance in the United States Congress, and there was a bill, and she has always claimed to be pro-life, and this is kind of people that I've talked about before, who want the mantle of pro-life, and they want the morality that comes wrong with it, but when push comes to shove, they're pro-aborts.
Yes.
This woman was a pathological liar the whole time. She was never pro-life. And when a bill came up in Congress, her first rattle out of the box in Congress, she pulls it out and makes sure that it can't pass. And now she's calling pro-life groups, quote, abhorrent and childish because they're opposed to her. And she says she's appalled by their behavior because these pro-life groups are now all of a sudden saying, well, you've been exposed, you're not pro-life.
Now, has she expressed specifically what she's referring to there?
Well, she says this bill didn't had an
I'm talking about
exception
the
for rape and
abhorrent
incest.
behavior
Right.
of the pro-life groups.
Just
Well,
because
they went to her office, right, during the March for Life. Jill Stanek and everybody went to her office and tried to get in. The way that it's being branded by the media, though, is Republican women have an issue with this bill. So suddenly everybody
exactly
becomes
what they're
alert to it because they're like, oh, well, then maybe it really does affect. If even Republican women, it should say pro-choice women are having a problem with this bill,
Right.
not Republican women.
Right. But the woman has been exposed as a liar, and she's now calling the pro-life movement names because they've exposed her, and they're
And because they're trying to hold her accountable and they
trying
want
to hold her
answers
feet to the
for it.
fire on
That's
it.
the abhorrent things that they're doing.
Yeah. All you need to ask this woman is, how can you claim to be pro-life and make sure that this bill doesn't pass a ban on 20-week abortions?
Yep.
And her argument is that the ban had an exception if you had been a victim of rape, but in order to take advantage of that exception, you had to be willing to report it to the police.
Right.
And she says requiring these women to report this to the police is a burden on these women. This was her excuse for not supporting this ban.
I feel like it would be a bigger burden on rapists. I mean,
That's
right?
that's
Wouldn't
the
it
real
be-
burden. But here's
really
the
It
thing.
would be a burden on them.
We know that nationally, only 16% of all forcible stranger rapes are reported to the police. Now, if we put a panel together of, let's say, 100 top law enforcement people in, and let's say, sex crimes units around the country, and said, what is the single thing that women could do to protect themselves against rapists? I guarantee you 100% of those people would say, report it when you're raped. If you would do that, because, you know, I've looked at the statistics on this back when we started the child predator thing. If you look at the thousands of women that are raped every year, they're not, if 1,000 women are raped, they're not raped by 1,000 different men. They might be raped by 300 different men, but it's the same men over and over that are, and they might be raped by 50 different men. It's the same men over and over.
Well, the irony is that they're trying to act like these women are in, I mean, they are in a fragile state. They're not trying to act like
Sure.
they are in a fragile state. So I understand that, but coddling them in the sense of saying, you know, you shouldn't be forced to actually report this. That's too hard for a woman, but having her undergo a violent, aggressive procedure against her body through an abortion is supposed to be healing in some way.
I don't know.
If we're going to be sympathetic, then let's actually try to empower these women to put those men behind bars so that we have less rape and less abortions.
But again, like I said, every law enforcement agency would tell you, if you want to reduce the number of rapes in the country, tell us when you're raped so we can go out and get the people who did it.
Absolutely.
We can take a relatively few number of rapists off the streets and eliminate all the rapes, because it's serial rapists that are causing the harm. It's not the one guy that does it. Nobody's going to do it once and then go home and say, oh, I won't do that again.
Right.
It's going to be the
That's not
serial
gonna happen.
rapist. And the way that person's going to get caught is if women report it. So in other words, this Renee Elmers person, who claims to be so pro-woman,
Is protecting rapists.
It's protecting rapists. It's saying, I don't want to see the very thing that law enforcement would tell you would protect women against rape more than any other single thing. I don't want to see that happen. And I'm going to justify pulling this pro-life bill and making sure that it fails, even though I'm pro-life.
I
The
believe it was
woman
in the
is a
same
liar.
article. I believe it was the same article said she voted for this very similar legislation in 2013.
Right.
So what has changed for her? You know,
What's changed for her now, she's in Congress.
Who's lining her pockets at this point that,
Right.
that she's going to pull back support of this?
Once you get into
'Cause
position,
it's going to cost her
when,
something.
when
if
you're
she
a
votes for it.
candidate, you can say all you want to what you'll do. But once you become an elected official, you can't say anymore. You got to act. And so when the time came that she had to act, we found out that she had been a pathological liar all along. And that's what's happened. But we're childish and abhorrent for pointing it out. Speaking of mixed messages, I saw something here that was kind of interesting the other day. Planned Parenthood's claiming about this ban on 20-week abortions. On one hand, when you talk about late-term abortions, Planned Parenthood comes out and says, oh, they almost never happen, right? There's almost no late-term abortions. But then Planned Parenthood issues a statement saying that if you ban 20-week abortions, it will affect 20 million American women.
Right.
Well, how is that?
They're confused.
If it's so rare, how would it affect 20 million women? You can't have it both ways.
Right.
Which one is it? Is it rare, or would it affect 20 million women to ban 20-week abortions?
The irony is that, because they're saying, well, her potential abortion that she might want one day, we really care about the potential there, but when it's a potential human being, we'll completely
Well,
ignore
there's
that
no such
fact.
thing as a potential
There,
human.
there's not.
Right.
Only potential future abortions that you might need at 20
Potential
weeks.
future
These
dollars.
people sometimes don't realize what they're saying. One of my all-time favorite people, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and of course we had her exposed in MAFA 21, talking about her statement of she thought Roe versus Wade was designed to get rid of people we don't want to have too many of. Remember that?
Yeah.
Well, now, which was what it was designed to do. She was just letting the cat out of the bag. Now she's come out and saying any restrictions on abortion, any whatsoever, are a, quote, crying shame because they make it harder for poor women to get abortions. She's just admitting again. Her concern is that poor women won't have enough abortions. Poor, by the way, being code for black, right?
Any minority that then the government would have to support in any way, we want to go ahead and just cough up the $500 on
Right.
the front end to abort them.
Well, real quickly, we got to move on here, but anyway, don't get me started on that. I think I'm probably not on Ruth Bader Ginsburg's Christmas card list
I don't
either.
think you are.
I don't think I am. That's sad.
I know.
That's really sad. Anyway, hey, I don't know if this is true yet or not. I'm going to throw it out here. But I want to make sure people understand we're not saying this is happening. But just in the last couple of days, prior to taping the show, it's being said that ISIS is, these people, all they're beheading and all this, they're executing, they're selling their body parts for money. They're forcing doctors. They say they've already executed some doctors who refused to do it, but they're cutting the heads off these people and then forcing doctors to take their organs out because there's an international market for those organs. Now, whether that's happening or not, I don't know. But in the last couple of days, I was hearing a story about it this morning on the radio coming here, and they say all these people are getting just really outraged about this. Well, let's think about it from this standpoint. We are the organization that went undercover and discovered that the abortion industry chops up the babies that they kill and sells them for parts. How's that different? And I kept on hearing this argument back in those days, even by people like Renee Elmers might tell me, well, yeah, I'm opposed to abortion, but at least some good can come from it. If you chop those babies up and sell their parts, some medical good can come from it. Why isn't that true here? So these Coptic Christians that just got their heads chopped off the other day, yeah, why aren't we saying, oh, that's a horrible thing? Yes, that's terrible.
At least some good can come
But
from
at least
it.
some good can come from it if they can take the livers and kidneys and eyes and all of them and donate them to medical science. Or they're not donating them; they're selling them. If it's happening, I don't know that it's happening. It may turn out to be an urban myth in the end. But if it is happening, I want to know. I want someone to tell me. Everybody that's all jacked up about this. How is it different than the baby parts thing? How is it different at all?
It's not.
It's not at all.
Argument is it's not. We are, as everybody knows, we're the ones who started the Bikers for Life thing, and we've had some pretty neat things happen as a result of that. And we're looking for ways now to expand that program greatly. And as you know, Renee, you've been on this thing since the day one. We got some pretty neat plans for this. We're looking at eventually, at some point, having a bikers ride across America.
Right.
For the unborn, Ride for the Unborn. And we're getting a lot of interest in the Bikers for Life thing. But we're going to need, in order to do some of the things that we need to do, we're going to need a national database that's gigantic of bikers that are pro-life.
Right.
And so we're starting some programs. We're experimenting with one right now in Alaska, actually. As you know, we had a conversation with some bikers in Alaska the other day. And we're going to be providing them some things, and they're going to go to some biker events and hand out things like this little flyer and try to get people to join. I want the audience to be thinking about ways that they can participate locally. They may not be bikers, they may not have any connection to the biker community, but this is a gigantic, untapped marketplace for us. And you've seen this. I know you were a little skeptical in the beginning when I had the idea to start with, but you've seen it. I mean, you've been there.
Right. Right.
And you've seen the enthusiasm. And
right. And we have some that are going to the clinics.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to, we're going to be coming up with some programs here that we'll be introducing on Life Talk that will get people the materials they need to go to biker events or to recruit some bikers. We need to get basically Bikers for Life coordinators in every state that are going to go to these events and hand out materials like this and tell people about Bikers for Life. And we're going to try to make it easier for people to do that. We've got some proposals. We had a meeting yesterday, or day before yesterday, talking about some of these things.
Right.
And so I just want people in the audience to be thinking about that. And believe me, everybody out there can get involved in this biker thing. And I'm telling you, people think I'm crazy, but when you see it for yourself, it's like when we went to the march in Dallas, it's just like every other march, and it's same people and the same signs and the same, everybody knows everybody. When the bikers start showing up, everything changes. Everything changes. The enthusiasm level goes up. Everybody's excited. There's a electricity in the air. It's the noise. It's the spectacle. It's just the whole thing.
Right.
And it really does reinvigorate the pro-life community that's there. To see that, first off, I think it changes the image of the pro-life movement.
That's exactly right. It breaks down those barriers, those
Stereotypes
that we have. We think this is what the pro-life movement looks like.
Right.
And these guys show up, bikes, long hair, beards, wearing their leathers, and
right.
oh, wait a minute.
This
We could agree on something very central.
right.
And it's exciting.
It is exciting, and so we're committed to this project, and we're going to continue on with it. We're looking for some ways now to help the mainstream pro-life community get behind this, and we'll be introducing some things. In the meantime, we're going to show a little video here that Sarah and our office put together, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Father Frank.
This is where it all began, and this is where we must bring it to an end.
Welcome back. That's a pretty neat little piece that she
Yes,
put together.
it is.
It's pretty cool.
She did good.
Yep. All right. For me, putting this show together a month is like herding cats.
Cats, yeah.
Well, here's one of the cats that's wandered off the reservation. Hello, Father Frank.
Hello, everyone. Good to be with you.
It's nice to have you here. First off, I told everybody about your father's accident. He slipped on the ice and hit his head. How's he doing?
Well, thank God he's on the mend, and I want to thank everybody for their prayers. Many folks left messages on my Facebook page. So he's doing much better, and he's been discharged from the hospital, and now he's just getting his strength back with walking and a little bit of physical therapy. So he's going to be back to normal pretty soon. And again, I just thank everyone for their concern. Well,
you know, I've met your mother and daddy several times, of course, and they've been here to the office. And you know, the Pavones are a pretty hard-headed bunch. So I suspect it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to do much damage to them by hitting them in the head. So,
right.
That's been my experience anyway.
That's right, and that's true. That's true literally and metaphorically.
Right. Of course, the one I like, Father Frank, is your mom, because as you know, your mother and I have a very good relationship, and your mom's a real talker, and she doesn't remind one little bit revealing any kind of family secrets. All you got to do is get her started, and it's not that hard to get her started, actually.
That's right. She'll do that at a drop of a hat, and sometimes she'll drop the hat.
Right.
So, she loves telling stories.
Yes, she does, and she's told me some really good ones about you that I'm still holding over your head, as you know. And every time she's around and starts to relay one of these stories, I notice that little beads of sweat start popping out on your forehead. But anyway, well, listen, last month when you were here, you talked about this new project you guys got going, Shockwaves of Abortion.
Yes.
And then also you've had, since then, you were at the March for Life and had some kind of interesting events there. First off, tell us where we are with this Shockwaves of Abortion thing. How's that going?
Well, you know, we are very pleased, you know, with how it has gone. It has launched, and the idea behind it is that abortion hurts everybody. We know it kills the baby, it hurts the mom. Increasingly, people are aware it hurts the dad. But now we had at the March for Life a visual testimony of the fact that it hurts the siblings, it hurts the grandparents, it hurts the friends, it hurts even the abortionists and their staff, and it hurts the pro-life people if they fail to save the life of a child. So what we did was we had people present giving testimony from all these different perspectives and holding signs showing all these different groups of people who are wounded and need healing. Very, very, very powerful because, you know, when, for example, Dr. Tony Levatino, who's one of our medical advisors and, of course, whom you know very well, too, stood there and gave his testimony and held his sign, you know, that always has an impact in and of itself, and he's been doing that for years. But when you do that in the presence of and standing next to the sibling of an aborted baby, when you give that testimony in the presence of the mom and the dad of an aborted baby, there's a dynamic of healing that takes place above and beyond when those testimonies are given individually. Because, for example, when a mom gives her testimony, "Oh, I had an abortion," you know, one of the things that comes out is she's very angry at that abortionist. But when she's standing next to a former abortionist who's apologizing, then a great deal of healing occurs. So that's what we saw both at the Supreme Court on the day of the March for Life in front of the steps of the court where we always have our gathering. And we saw it again out in the West Coast where we were present at the Walk for Life. And so we were very, very moved by all of that. We had also had a press conference at the beginning of January, and we got some good media coverage to get this idea out, which, of course, is a year-long campaign. So each month we're focusing on a different group.
Great. You had some confrontation with some of the pro-aborts there, as I understand it. What was that about? We
did, too. Yes, we did. What happened that day was that as the march was progressing up Constitution Avenue, we had some folks up at the court getting the platform ready for us to do this. And the pro-aborts were there, and Alveda King, who, of course, as everyone knows, is a niece of Martin Luther King. She's on our staff, and she was up there because she was one of the ones giving testimony. And the pro-aborts began to converge on our the area where we were setting all of this up, and they were becoming more and more confrontational and vile, and as is their nature, as we well know.
Right.
So Alveda was getting more and more saddened by all of this. Now here we have Dr. King. I mean, it's in her genes to have nonviolent resistance against this kind of evil. So she decides to walk right in the middle of this group of raging pro-aborts, not to say anything, not to shout, but to lie down on the ground. It was an amazing sight. She lay down on the ground with one of her signs right on top of her body, and she put her arms out in the formation of a cross, and she just kept her eyes fixed on the heavens, and she was praying silently in sadness and in love for these deceived, wicked people. And one of them there started yelling and cursing and cursing at her and saying, who is this? And they used some expletives, which we will delete here. And one of my staff turned to them and said, that is the niece of Martin Luther King Jr. And the pro-abort that had been cursing at her turned away in shame and left the scene. But you see how they are. Of course, we see it all the time, and we talk about it on this program.
Wow. That's pretty powerful.
It is. They didn't know what to do, and then and of course, it's the message of Dr. King in the flesh here, because as he said, nonviolence is not weakness, it's not passivity, it's
right.
a strong force that confronts evil, and we saw it again happening that day. Right. Mark, we were also blessed with another thing when we did once the pro-aborts cleared away, and then we started the gathering. We also had Pope Francis's personal representative to the United States present to lead our opening prayer and to give some words of encouragement. This is Archbishop Carlo Vigano. He is called the Papal Nuncio. There's one in every country. And so in the name of Pope Francis, he talked about how we have to constantly trust in God's mercy, those that have had abortions, those that have partaken in abortions, because the whole gathering and the whole campaign of the Shockwaves is about that mercy and reconciliation. So Archbishop Vigano graced the occasion with his blessing and his support for what we're doing here at Priests for Life.
That's great. That's great. Well, it'll sound like y'all had a very good event this year. So
it was, yes, it was, and as we've told our viewers, abortionshockwaves.com is the special website, and there'll be a special focus each month for this campaign. So the month of March, the focus is grandparents and how grandparents are affected by the abortion of the loss of a grandchild to abortion.
Well, that's great. Well, congratulations on that. You guys are doing good work as usual. So,
well, thank you, and it's always great to partner with all of you guys too.
Well, we'll be looking to see you next month.
Yes.
Right. If I can get you rounded up again. And Troy's going to be back next month.
Oh, wonderful.
Or so he claims. I'll believe it when I see him pulling up in the driveway. So
I see. Yes.
Just like I'll believe it when I see you pulling up in the driveway. All right. Well, you take care and say hi to your mom and dad.
Okay, sure will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. They sound like they had a good time at the march.
One of the funniest things about the protesters who showed up is where we normally march to at the Supreme Court, they formed a line so that we could not get to that spot anymore. And then later on their website, they claimed that they halted the march, but it was really 10 feet before where we normally halt ourselves anyway, so it wasn't really had they had some guts, they would have done it halfway through the march and tried to hold back 600,000 people, but instead they halted us right where we already kind of start halting. So Kristen and I walked up to them, and the cops were facing them, and they were this line of patriarchy smashers, and so I was like, we're busting through, I'm not gonna have this is unacceptable, and I don't always embrace nonviolence, so I was fine with this, and I walked up to him and I was like, move, and they were like, no, okay. And they moved, and we walked through, and then we were just on the other side by ourselves, and I was like, that was so anticlimactic.
You were expecting a fight.
Something.
Yeah, that's right.
Nothing at all.
That's like when your husband won't fight with you.
I know.
Yeah, it's really disappointing, isn't it?
He never tries to halt me.
Right.
You're a very
He knows
bold
better.
person.
Right. All of this brings up a point that we had collected some stuff from to talk about on this show. There's been a fundamental change in the pro-aborts over the last few years. Used to, they would argue with us, and they would try to make their position. The problem that they had was they don't have any new arguments. The arguments that the pro-aborts make today to defend abortion are the same ones they made 40 years ago. We've got new arguments. I mean, since Roe versus Wade, all the new technology that's come along, everything that's new that's come along has favored us. So we've got new stuff. And they found that they were losing the debate. They could not win the defense of abortion. There was no defense of it. And so now, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but you kind of saw it at the March for Life, and we see it now mainly on college campuses. This is where we see it most commonly. They don't try to engage the pro-life movement anymore. They try to silence the pro-life movement.
Shout over you. Yep.
They try to silence it. And for example, we had this thing, Exeter College, Oxford Students for Life, were holding an event, and the pro-aborts on campus tried to get the school to bar them, not engage them, not say that what they're saying is wrong or here's our position, but just bar them completely. University of North Carolina, National Abortion and Reproductive Rights League tried to prevent the pro-lifers there. Pro-life feminist from trying to make the pro-life feminist position. Why feminists should just, which is, by the way, the early feminist position.
Right.
Go back and study Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Virginia Woodhull. Go on down the line. Clayton's Weekly, the feminist magazine from back in those days, openly pro-life, adamantly saying, look, you cannot this was before abortion was legal, of course. We're talking about 100 years ago or more. They're saying you cannot legalize abortion. This is something that sexually irresponsible men and sexually predatory men will use to prey on women.
Well, now, as Paul said, it will exploit women. It's the most,
And now we know that's true.
We absolutely know it's true. Okay, so we saw something interesting happen where Stephanie Gray from the Center for Bioethical Reform up in Canada had come down here to a college campus, and she was speaking. She was actually having a debate with a professor, so both sides were being represented. This feminist group came in with their hangers and started shouting over her, and she just kind of had to sit there, and they made themselves look ridiculous. But I think a better plan would be to actually come prepared with a sign that says, radical feminism is about shutting up other women, is about yelling over their voices, because that's what they're doing. They only want the feminists they agree with to be heard, but other women's voices and opinions, they absolutely want to shout over.
Well, it's like I said something earlier. Choice is fine, but you can't unchoose it. Choice is a one-way street. You can only choose abortion. You can't unchoose it. And we're seeing this. We saw this at Georgetown. We've got other examples here in just the last month where pro-life groups tried to put on presentations, and instead of coming in and saying, well, no, you're wrong because of this, or here's our position or whatever, just shut down any kind of discussion of it. It's like anything that opposes abortion is illegitimate. You can't make that argument.
Rebecca Kiesling actually posted a picture from one of her talks where a guy had like one of those cheap plastic hangers, and I was like, okay, come on. First of all, just get a wire hanger. Like, if you're going to do it right. I think what we should do is go up with marshmallows and just stick them on the end of all of their wire hangers.
No, that's not what we should do. Let me tell you what we should do.
It's what we should do.
No, that's not what we should do. That's not what we should do.
Listen,
Listen, I've been saying this for years. We are not responsible for the coat hangers. If abortion were made illegal today, and next month there was a bunch of illegal abortionists around the country using coat hangers to abort women, 100% of those people would be pro-choice. It isn't the pro-life movement that's going to go out and use the coat hanger.
Because at the end of the day, we don't think women should be dying from abortion. They shouldn't ever feel forced to have an abortion to begin with. They shouldn't be dying of illegal abortions. They shouldn't be dying of the legal ones that they currently are dying of.
But the fact is, everybody that gets killed in an abortion clinic or in an illegal abortion or gets raped in an abortion clinic, and I wrote about that in 1996 in Line 5. Nobody knew that was going on. And now we're doing a new report that you're working on. You're getting close to finishing that up.
Yes.
And showing how that's continuing to go on and it's actually growing. Every woman that was put in a nursing home, every one of these women that suffer as a result of quote unquote coat hanger abortions suffer at the hand of somebody who's pro-choice, not pro-life.
Right. Absolutely.
And if that's not true, I'll tell you what, I've challenged pro-aborts back when I was debating abortion, when they would debate. And I would always challenge them, saying, look, if your concern is coat hanger abortions, we can solve this right now, real easily. I will take it on myself to get every pro-lifer in the country to sign a document saying they will never do an illegal abortion. You do the same thing, and we don't have to worry about coat hanger abortions.
Yep.
But the fact is, I could get everybody. Would y'all all sign that document?
Absolutely.
Sure would.
Right? Does every pro-lifer you know, would you think they would sign it?
Absolutely.
Right. None of their people would. So if you think about it for a minute, what these people are saying when they bring out their coat hangers is, if you don't let us kill babies, we're going to kill women. But somebody's dying.
But it's your fault.
Yeah, but we're responsible for it. And so when I say that, no, that's not what we need to do with the coat hangers, putting marshmallows on them or whatever.
It would be pretty funny, though.
Oh, yeah, it'd be real funny.
It'd be great.
What I'm saying is, we ought to take that coat hanger and jam it down their throat and say, we're not taking responsibility anymore for the women that you are threatening to kill. We're not going to do it.
Maybe that's why they bring the plastic ones, because they're afraid Mark Crutcher is going to be there to jam it down their throat.
Maybe that's true.
They don't want to go with the wire
But
ones.
they continue to do this. They continue to try to make us responsible for the women they're threatening to kill. And I'm not sure why we do that. Why don't we point this fact out to them? And I think they would take those coat hangers away if we started being very aggressive every time they brought those out, any venue where they bring them out.
They
saying,
wouldn't listen to us anyways.
they're not going to listen to us, but the people who hear this and the people who see it,
That's right.
they're suddenly going to say, well, wait a minute, that's right. It's not the pro-lifers who are threatening to kill these women. It's the pro-aborts that are threatening to kill them. So it's extortion. They want us to be responsible for the women they're going to kill. Get me started on that. Don't you come out sticking marshmallows on me.
That wasn't me.
Huh?
That wasn't me.
It could have been.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to sit around the campfire and sing Kumbaya with these people. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about politics. We talked earlier about Renee's good buddy, Wendy Davis. The pro-aborts in Congress, the Democrats, Sheila Jackson Lee, from here in Texas, a Texas disgrace if there ever was one, Congress nuisance from South Texas, they're getting concerned, apparently. We've seen this in other areas, but the pro-aborts in Congress are getting concerned that the Republicans are starting to get the image with the American people of being the religious side, and the Democrats are getting the image of being the anti-religious side, the godless side, which is what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they're having these forums where they're coming out and saying, we've got to defend our godless liberal policies. They're not saying it that, but that's what they're saying. They don't use those terms, but that's what they're doing. We've got to do that in a way that makes people understand that we're Christians. So we can defend abortion and be a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you think you can defend abortion and be a Christian, you're a bald-faced liar.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot defend abortion and be a Christian. If you defend abortion, you are not a Christian. And people say, well, how can you make that judgment? We know them by their fruits, first off, but support for legalized abortion denies two basic tenets of Christianity. If I were to ask you, Renee, or I ask you, you're new on the staff here because I've asked her this before.
Sure.
All right. Is one of our tenets that God is perfect and cannot make mistakes?
Absolutely.
Is that one of the things that we believe?
Yes.
Okay. Is the second thing that we believe that if I ask you this question, who is the author of life, who would you say?
God.
God is the author of life.
Absolutely.
All right. If God is the author of life and God doesn't make mistakes, then the only conclusion you can draw from that is that when a baby is in a mother's womb, it was God's will that it be there.
Correct.
That's the only conclusion you can draw from that. There is no third option or second option. That's the only option you have. It's God's will that it be there. So abortion, in effect, works against God's will. You cannot sit out here and say, I am working against God's will, but I'm a Christian. You can't do that. That's not even logical to even make that argument. So don't tell me there's such a thing in the world as a pro-choice Christian, which is what these people want you to believe. They're lying. And Sheila Jackson Lee and some of these, Emmanuel Cleaver and some of these are James Clyburn. These people are all out here trying to trot their Christian beliefs, so claimed Christian beliefs out in front of the public so that they can put the happy face on all the evil that they propose, primarily abortion.
Well, and they're just hoping that Christians don't know their Bible well enough so that they'll say,
Or they're not
all
thinking.
right, that
They'll
sounds
latch
close
onto it.
enough. I'll go along with that because that would make my life easier.
Right.
Yeah, and the reality is they're doing exactly that, assuming people don't know. And we're filled with a nation of followers, right? I mean, we're not thinking for ourselves. We're not looking at the facts. We're not digging in to not only politics but our Bibles or whatever that may be. And so when somebody we trust and respect who's a public figure makes a statement, that's why we follow what celebrities say. Celebrities aren't necessarily any more educated than we are about any issue, any political issue, but they make a statement, and that makes headline news. We follow exactly what they say.
It's amazing. You mentioned celebrities. You ever see these people just interviewed, and you look at them and you think, this person, I don't get the feeling this person's very bright. They're just not very smart, and yet we follow them.
We do
because they're famous. They got name recognition. You mentioned Meryl Streep earlier. I saw an interview with her one time, and that's what I took away from it. I'm listening to what this woman is saying, and she comes across as very urbane on television and very, with it and smart and talented and all that. And she may be talented from an actor standpoint, but you talk to her and you think, dang, this is not one of the intellectual giants of our time. Why would people put a lot of faith in what this person says? Why would we care, what kind of toothpaste they use? So obviously intelligent people use that kind of toothpaste.
I think what we're seeing from the celebrity left, that is what we keep kind of trying to describe as condescension that's disguised as intelligence. So if I talk to you like you're stupid and you don't know anything about anything, that doesn't automatically make me smart. That just means that I am talking down to you and being condescending. That's what we see Jon Stewart do all the time.
Right.
He just has this air that why would I even consider any type of conservative talking point, because as long as I sound like this, most people are going to take me seriously. And it's almost a tool that our side needs to use a little bit more, because we do have the truth and the facts and knowledge and education on our side. So why are we not almost talking, because we're compassionate and kind and loving, and we want to give them truth. We don't just want to talk down to them and make them feel stupid, but it's been completely hijacked on the other side, because that's the way they're talking to youth. And if you talk condescendingly enough, someone will say, wow, you must be really, really smart. I'm going to listen to you and vote for Barack Obama.
Right.
I'm not registered to vote or anything, but I'll vote for Barack Obama.
Right.
That's good, Destiny.
On this bill that we talked about earlier, that got pulled on the 20-week abortion ban in Congress, one of the things that Trent Franks, who was one of the sponsors of the bill, was asking during the hearings of all these pro-aborts, Paul Tonko, Democrat from New York, Xavier Becerra, Democrat from California, and one of my favorite people, Nancy Pelosi, Congress nuisance from California. He asked them just a very simple question, not whether they support this ban or not, which obviously didn't. He just asked them a very simple question, and there was others, but these three in particular. Just answer this question: is a child, an unborn child at 20 weeks, or a fetus, whatever you want to call it, is that a living human being? They wouldn't answer it.
They're dodging the question, yeah.
They refuse to answer that question.
Because then they have to say it's okay to kill a human being.
Right.
An innocent human being.
That's right.
Yep, and Representative Tonko, his wife's an OBGYN, and you can't tell me that, and he has, I think, 5 kids.
He knows.
He knows exactly
Right.
that a 20-week is a human being.
Right. I'll guarantee you, when his wife was 20 weeks pregnant with all those kids, he didn't go around telling people, oh, she's pregnant with an obligate parasite, or any of the other terms that they use to describe.
Right.
Oh,
Just
that's
a
my
blob.
baby.
Right.
That's my next baby right there, right? They know. Obama is threatening, and we're just about out of time here, as usual. Obama's threatening to vote any kind of pro-life bill that would ban taxpayer funding of abortions. Now, this guy, again, you talk about liars being exposed. Of course, you look up liar in the dictionary and you see Obama's picture in there. But remember back when they were having the debate on Obamacare, he was saying, I do not want federal funding of abortion. Federal funding is prohibited by the Hyde Amendment. Obamacare does not cover abortion. It will not. It will never cover abortion. Now we know he was lying all along.
Right.
And now he's even coming out saying, we want federal funding to pay for abortion.
Right. Yeah.
This guy's...
It's his agenda.
You look back, if you lived through the Watergate years like I did, and y'all were all too young, but, and you always thought no one could have been a bigger pathological liar, more immoral, than Richard Nixon. This guy makes Richard Nixon look like Ned in the first primer. Richard Nixon is a lightweight on the scale of pathological liars and immoral presidents. Richard Nixon is not even in the league with this guy right here. I mean, this guy is on a different planet. Now, you want to see something that's embarrassing for American politics now that we're on this. You're starting to see now in Russia calls for the government to ban abortion because they've had such an experience with it and they know how horrifying it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the numbers are staggering. I put out a letter, a blog article a few years ago, as you remember, about what the pro-life movement has accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that, because we often think we hadn't done much and, you know, we haven't stopped abortion and we haven't really accomplished that much. And 56 million babies are dead. And I always pointed out, if you look at Soviet Union, you want to see an example of a country, an industrialized nation. They were the first industrialized nation on earth to legalize abortion. How that plays out, you don't have any opposition because they banned any opposition to abortion. You couldn't be a pro-life group over there. They eradicated all the churches. The numbers are staggering, staggering. The Soviet Union, but during the time of the Soviet Union, and the Russians have done a study of this, the average Soviet woman had 9 abortions during her childbearing years. Average woman. They had regions in the Soviet Union where they identified that the average woman in those regions had 22 to 24 abortions during their childbearing years. 90% of all first pregnancies ended in abortion.
Wow.
For every 4 pregnancies during the time of the Soviet Union, 3 of them were aborted.
5 million abortions a year there.
5 million abortions?
5 million.
Yeah. Yeah, you were studying that the other day and you...
I know. I didn't realize that so many, what was going on. It's free for anyone over 16. Free abortions.
And there's
free
a
healthcare.
You mean,
huge-
wait a minute, you mean like Obamacare would be?
That exactly.
Right.
That's exactly.
So they're gonna do away with any opposition to abortion, which they're already trying to do that. And I'll guarantee you that was part of this IRS scandal where they were trying to take away the tax-exempt status to conservative groups. That was part of that program. Do away with all opposition to abortion and make it free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you want to see the model for that? Look at the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're saying, the Soviets are saying, our women have these massive amount of health problems. They're admitting that. And they're now looking, now you're having the Soviets, even Putin himself is starting to make noises like, we need to stop this. We need to outlaw abortion. We need to stop this tragedy in our country.
And that's just their physical health problems. That's not even the emotional health
Right.
that these women are going through. Lauren Musica with Sidewalk Advocates for Life said that they just set up a team over there. All they're doing is standing out there with fetal models. They're not even doing sonograms. And she said women are just flocking to them and saying, that's not, no way, that's a baby at 10 weeks. Like, they have been kept in the dark that much about fetal development. She said they're just having these massive breakdowns and they're having to help these women through the emotional turmoil because they have, on average, had, 10 to 12 abortions per woman there.
Right.
So, yeah, just as much physical damage, there is an equal amount of emotional damage.
Absolutely.
Just no education.
No.
That is scary.
And I still say, yeah, and I'm writing, I've been telling you guys lately here on the show that I'm writing a new book. And one of the things I talk about in there is this issue of let's don't be too hard on ourselves in the pro-life movement. Yeah, we've got problems and we've got warts and we haven't done everything right and we could have done this better. And looking back, it's kind of like you and I have talked about, if you could go back and be 15 years old and know what you know now,
Right.
you could rule the world, right? But we can't. But we need to quit beating ourselves up because I'm telling you something. Without the pro-life movement, we'd have had the same experience that the Soviets have had. And we would not now be standing on the graves of 55 to 56 million babies. We'd be standing on the graves of 250 million or 300 million or God knows how many. And we'd have abortion clinics in every mall in the country. And if you don't think Planned Parenthood would put abortion clinics in malls like the way eyeglass companies have put them in there, then you don't know Planned Parenthood. They would love to have a Planned Parenthood facility in every mall in this country. And if it had not been for the pro-life movement, that and many other things that I talk about in this book would have happened. So let's don't beat up on ourselves so much. as we've done in the past. Anyway, we got to almost everything this month, but we're just about out of time. We are out of time. I want to thank you for filling in. You did a great job.
Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
And really brought something to the table. Maybe we'll have you back on again if you're
Would love to.
if you're interested and we didn't embarrass you too much or
Not at all.
weren't
Not
too
at
hard
all.
on you.
Appreciate it.
And you won't be back next month, right?
I will be gone next month.
You'll be gone next month, but Troy and Father Frank theoretically are going to be here.
I think you should do 1 month where everyone's bald, just the whole panel. Of
Bald?
all bald. Yeah.
You're ve-
Follically challenged.
Follically
sorry.
challenged.
I
Listen-
got a lesson in sensitivity.
So
Right.
are you calling
Earlier
for Frank
today.
and Troy to be bald?
I think they should maybe consider
I'm-
shaving it off. For a
I'm
month.
okay with that. I'll see if Troy. You think we might talk them into that?
Probably not. I'm pretty sure no.
But anyway, you and I will be back next month. So
will be.
You know, if one of us doesn't murder the other one first, but
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Right. But anyway, thanks, guys. Great show. Well, that's all the time we have for this month. Thanks for being with us. And don't ever forget, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how this killing is going to stop. We'll see you in April.